This is the first hooping for your double snap card wallet, and the first step is to hoop your stabilizer and stitch out the placement for the pocket detail stitches that we're going to do. The next step is to take your piece of vinyl that you're going to use for your two pockets and place it to cover that placement stitch all the way around. You can pin it at the corners to keep it safe while you stitch the next step. I use Easy Frames by Durkee, so I tend to just use my little wonder clips and clip it to the stabilizer. And the next step is to simply stitch the details for the pockets. It's just two lines going across your vinyl. You can see here that my two lines for the pocket detail are done. You can now remove this from the hoop, and I will, whoops, I will show you. Now you can see how dirty the shelf on the bottom of my machine is. You can remove this from your hoop, and I will show you how to trim this out before continuing. Okay, I just moved my office and I'm not exactly sure where my big tripod is, so I'm just going to point to where you're going to trim, and then I will trim it myself off camera, and then I'll come back. The way you want to trim these pockets is you want to trim on the inside of this kind of diamond shape. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, then you're going to go to this one. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I'm going to go off camera, trim mine, and then I'll come back to show you the result. All right, so this is the result of my trimming. Just disregard this extra stabilizer over here. That's just extra from my long roll of stabilizer. So I trimmed the inside of this diamond shape. Notice that I did not trim the top or the bottom. Okay, I just trimmed straight up and in the inside of that diamondish shape. Okay, these are going to be your two pockets. This is scrap. Okay, now you're going to load up the second part of this design, and you're going to hoop more stabilizer and stitch out the placement step for the actual card wallet. I also want to note that I just noticed when I turned the video off last time that I had my space heater in my office on for the first part, so I'm sorry if it was loud in the background. I did turn it off, so you should be able to hear me better now if you couldn't before. You're going to take your piece of vinyl. This is going to be for the outside of your card wallet. You're going to place it to cover those placement stitches that you did in the first step, and pin at the corners, or use your wonder clips with your easy frames or fast frames or whatever you use, just to make sure it stays stable so you can stitch out whatever design is on the outside of your card wallet. For mine, I'm doing the plain card wallet with an applique, so I'm going to clip this down and I'm going to stitch the placement for my applique pieces. All right, just in case anybody out there does not know how to do applique, I'm going to give you a little crash course instead of just flying through it as if everybody knows how to do it. So this is called a placement step for your applique. Applique has 3 steps: placement, tack down, and satin. So first it shows you where to put your fabric. I've got 2 rectangles. I could have just done one big piece of fabric. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but I did cut 2 separate pieces of fabric. Would be handy if you wanted to do 2 separate patterns on your rectangles. So I'm just going to say, yeah, that's what I was doing. So you place your fabric to cover that placement step in its entirety. Then you pin or clip it down. Then you run the next step, which will tack that fabric down with another line exactly the same as the placement. I have now stitched my tack down, and I trimmed around the edge of that tack down as close as I can. And I want to note that I did not pin my fabrics. I just stood here and watched them because, I don't know, I'm just feeling lazy today, I guess. And look at this, how bubbly this is. For best results, you really need to pin down your applique fabric. Don't take shortcuts like I just did. Just want to show you that as like a do as I say, not as I do. This is what happens if you just think, oh, I'll just toss my fabric on there and it'll just stitch the tack down. So let the tack down stitch around your fabrics, and then trim along the edge just as well as you can. And then you're going to stitch the satin stitch around both of those pieces of fabric. Well, that took a minute, but you can see that my satin stitch is now stitched out and my applique pieces look great. The next step is going to be circle placements for your snaps. Sometimes when we do key fobs, I tell you that these circle placements for your snaps are optional. For this particular project, you need to make sure that when you fold your wallet, the snaps line up. So this is not optional, this is mandatory. So now stitch the next step, which is 4 small circles to show you where to install your snaps at the end of your project. Now you can see that I've stitched my circle placements at each end of the project. Now you're going to unhoop and flip your hoop over. Now you're going to grab your pocket fabrics and your backing fabric for the next part of the project. Now let me tell you something. If you use a piece of vinyl for this backing, it's going to be really thick inside your project. So what I like to do is I like to use a piece of black stabilizer for a lot of the backing on my projects when I just need something to cover stitches but I don't want it to be too thick. You can use a product called Olyfun, O-L-Y-F-U-N. You can cut up a reusable shopping bag and use that as a non-fraying kind of backing piece. All you're trying to do is cover these, quote, ugly stitches in the back. So you don't need something, you're not wanting something to bulk up your project. Also, the measurement on this is correct for the same reason that I just said. We don't want this backing piece to go all the way to both edges, because if you do that, then that's just another layer that you have to push your snap through. And a lot of people have problems with snaps anyway, so we don't want to add to that. Now, of course, if you do want your backing fabric to go all the way across your project, you can of course do that. My steps and my tutorials are not embroidery law, and you can do whatever works best for you. So put that aside for now. Grab your pockets. Do you see how you have these little arrows, your little check marks? Find the bottom of the check mark, and I want you to line your pocket piece up with that bottom, and I want you to set it so that the edges, the beginning and end of your stitching, come to the beginning and the end of your satin stitch. See that? Check that out. The pocket is lining up to the bottom of that check mark, and the end of this stitch is coming to the end of that satin, okay? Or the edge of that satin. On this end, same thing. You want to line the pocket up with the bottom of that check mark, and the end of the stitching matches up with the edge of the satin. If you're making a different version of this wallet, or you just chose not to use the applique for some reason, you can line the ends of the detail stitching up with the outline of the card wallet. So I am going to go off camera and I'm going to line both of these up in that way that I just described. I'm going to clip them down, and then I'll tell you how to do the inside backing piece. I think I've said 400 times in this video alone that I use Easy Frames by Durkee, and so I used Wonder Clips to clip these two corners down of my pockets, and then at the top it was easier for me to use pins to pin that down. Of course, I pinned from the front so that there's no sharp pointies near the near the bobbin piece of my machine. So now I'm going to grab my backing fabric. I'm going to lift up these pockets gently so we don't disturb the clips or the pins, and I'm going to line that up in the middle of the project. Okay, so that way, look, it's covering the ugly stitches on the back. And now I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to pin this backing piece down as well. Then I'm going to replace my hoop. I'm going to check underneath my hoop and make sure that nothing is folded or wrinkled, and then I'm going to stitch the final step. All right, I think the cat is out of the bag now that I changed projects and shot the last half of this tutorial differently because I came across something that wasn't quite right, and so I switched in the middle, and instead of the Science applique that I had earlier, I now have Golden Girls fabric that I got at JoAnn a couple of years ago. So you're not crazy. I did switch fabrics on you. I was just trying to make sure everything was perfect in the tutorial. In my opinion, the two most important rules for in the hoop machine embroidery are: 1, make sure when you replace your hoop, when you are doing a project that involves removing your hoop and placing different layers on the back of your hoop, make sure that when you replace your hoop, those fabrics aren't folded over in any way, that they are secured and ready to be stitched down. And the second one is, before you unhoop or unclip your project, your finished project, I know it's exciting and you want to see the finished product, but before you unhoop, always flip that hoop over like I just did and make sure everything is perfectly stitched down. Because once you unhoop it or unclip it, it ain't going back in that hoop or on that frame, and your project could possibly be a total waste of your materials. So those are two rules that I find very important. I have flipped my frame over and I see that everything looks right. So I'm going to go ahead and unclip and take it to my desk, and I'm going to trim carefully around the edge of the entire design. This is my finished card wallet. There's the front and there's the inside. Now you're going to take it over to your snap press and you're going to install snaps in the circles. Remember that since this wallet just folds and snaps, you want the caps, that is the round shiny part of each snap, on this side, all four, and then you want the studs and socket pieces of the snaps on the insides to match up. One here, and then one set here and one set here. That way you can fold it over and snap it closed. Here you can see that I've installed my snaps as instructed. I've got the caps on the outside and the corresponding pieces on the inside. And when you fold your wallet over, it just snaps closed. I hope this video helped demystify the process of making one of these easy, adorable, functional, and cute little snap wallets. And I will see you in the next video, and I'll chat with you in the group. Bye!